like I'm probably the oldest one here, so I'll make sure I speak loud and clear. Oh, rough crowd. All right, so once again, my name's Raleigh. What I'm going to do here is I'm giving my testimony. I'm going to talk a little bit. I got to paint a picture of my history and my bringing up, and then I'm going to go into the transformation part. And then I'm also going to go into how God is working in my life now. So any Catholics? Anyone grew up Catholic here? Yeah, recovery? That's what CR stands for, Catholic recovery. So I grew up Catholic. My mom actually wanted to become a nun before she met my dad. And her dad was like, oh, no, I want grandkids. So she did the next best thing and became a nurse. Once she got her degree in the Philippines, she came to the States and got her license to work in the United States. My dad, he grew up also in the Philippines, in the province, where his parents passed away when he was just a child. And he had, like dozens of brothers and sisters, half brothers and sisters. So he house hopped. He lived in homes that had metal sheet roofs. When he turned 18, he joined the United States Navy. The Navy was stationed in the Philippines. And that's where he got an opportunity to live the American dream and get his citizenship, where he met my mom in the East Coast in Newark, New Jersey, where I was born, and my two brothers, my older brothers, were born, and then we moved to California, where he finally retired. Like I said, I grew up Catholic, did the whole sacraments thing, was baptized as a baby, didn't even know I was baptized because I was a baby. Then I was forced into doing confirmation, which is essentially getting baptized again as an adult. You do your first communion, all the fancy stuff, right? The religious stuff. It was a religion. It wasn't a relationship. I didn't know. I believed in God. I knew there was a God. I knew and believed that there was Jesus Christ. I just didn't know him. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So like I said, I have two older brothers and a younger brother. We lived in Newark, New Jersey, lived in Chicago. We moved to San Diego, moved to Chicago, San Diego. I was a military brat, so we kind of had that absent father kind of thing, because my dad was always gone on deployment, either underway for several months, or because my mom didn't want to lose her license, we stayed in the States when he got deployed to Japan several times, and that was like a two-year gig. So I had my two older brothers that I looked up to as role models, as father figures growing up. And the problem with that in the 80s, so I lived in San Diego, National City. Anyone familiar with that area? Old area. Growing up in the 80s and being first generation Filipino American, there's a cultural gap. We're trying to figure out where do we fit. Because I got the Filipino culture and then I got the American culture, and we go into public schools, and it was just hard to find a fit. So we looked at movies, we looked at videos and rap music, and the gang culture was in a rise back in the 80s. They came up with so many movies called Colors. I forget all the other movies that came out with. Boys in the Hood, a whole bunch of them. And I would start wearing the Ben Davis, the Dickies outfits with the Nike Cortez. I would live that lifestyle. It's funny because some of these kids are wearing that now, right? And the baggy clothes. My two older brothers got heavily into it, where one of them got jumped into a gang called Bahalana, which is originated from the Philippines that came here to the States. And that gang culture to me was, man, that's what a man's supposed to be like. This hardcore guy who gets respect. Everywhere I went, they knew who I was because they knew who my brother was. The first day I went to my freshman year, the principal and vice principal introduced me to them just to let them know they were the authority figure of the school. And I was like, dang, I don't know what we got. They always check up on me and my little brother every time we were going out to different events at school. So I saw a lot of stuff that my brother got into, a lot of gang violence. Also, it turned into the racing scene. So he was stealing parts of Honda Civics and Nissans to build up his crew. So it was cliques, gangs, cliques, racing crew. It was a bunch of different things.
That's where my car parts went.
Yeah, that's so if you're missing a Cadillac converter, that's where it originated from. School was not for me, and I would constantly struggle with school, and I didn't realize. I knew something was different about me, but I didn't really know until I was like seeking counseling in my 30s and was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADD. So because my mom worked so hard, she worked 3 jobs as a nurse while my dad was gone because she wanted us to have everything she didn't have growing up. So it was kind of an embarrassment to my mom. And you know, I'm a mama's boy. I don't want to disappoint my mom. But having F's and failing school all the time and disappointing my mom, it made me feel miserable. So with that said, moving forward to after high school, barely passing high school, she paid expensive money for a vocational school for me to become a nurse. Back then, I forget what it's called. It was some kind of school over there, and I failed. She paid more money. I failed, paid more money, just thousands and thousands of dollars. And I was like, damn, dude, what am I going to do with myself? So I decided to join the military. Me and my buddy, we went to college, but we just never went to class. So I tell people, yeah, I went to UCR, went to Cal State, just never got my degree, right? So the military was the only option. And we both, I didn't want to do the Navy thing because, you know, I didn't want to be like, I was stubborn. I didn't want to be like my dad, right? So it was either the Marine Corps or the Army. I just happened to go into the Army recruiter, and he sent me to the MEP station where you take your test, your ASVAB, and I failed that miserably. And my buddy, who ended up getting like 2 or 3 pages of different MOSs he could choose from, I had like a third of a page, and it wasn't appealing to the jobs that they were offering me at the time. So I said, dang. I walked out of the MEP station. This Army Reserve recruiter chases after me. He's this big old dude, about 6'5", 250, well-decorated, square jaw, Staff Sergeant Johnson, airborne tabs, all of it. And I'm just looking at him. He's talking to me. He's trying to sell me the recruiting thing. I had no idea what reserves was. All I heard at the very end of what he was saying was, and you make a lot of money. So I said, cool. Signed the papers, and I was just thinking back. I'm like, man, this guy's BA. He's badass. And that's who I wanted to be. That's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be that guy. That's what I thought the image of a man's supposed to be. So I was lucky. I got in the reserves. It wasn't what it turned out to be. I went from going 100% to slowing down at a reserve unit. If you don't know what the difference is, active duty is a little more squared away than the reserve side. And I was like, nah, this is not what I wanted. So I went to my command and said, hey, I got to go active duty. He's like, sorry, can't do that. So what do you mean? He's like, but we're asking for volunteers to go to Kosovo. This was back in 2000. And I said, sign me up. And it was a 9-month deployment. Nothing around the world was really going on in the early 2000s. So we went to the Balkans. And in this place, all military special forces branches and our allies came as a task force to do this, this peacekeeping mission. And I got an opportunity to meet some SF guys, special forces guys. And because I was, back to the recruiting thing, he recruited me and gave me what I wanted, which was a combat medic MOS. But I could only do that in the reserves. I couldn't do it in active duty. I don't know why. Maybe because he lied. I don't know. Just like he told me I was getting paid a lot, right? So this 18 Delta, which is a special forces medic, wanted some enlisted medics to come with him to do what they call a med cap. and that's a medical capability. You go into a village or a small town, and you do what you can, kind of like an urgent care. Some antibiotics, some medications. We had a box full of reading glasses, some shoes, some stuff, just like civil affairs stuff, right? To build the confidence and the trust of the people around us. But these SF guys, man, they were just like these amazing looking dudes, tough guys, super smart. Something that was attracted me because of their intelligence and their physical fitness, which was like, man, this is what a man's supposed to be. That's the image of a dude. Come back home, wake up to 9/11, get the call, hey, get ready, we're gonna get deployed. I get into what they call a FST, a forward support team, where we basically follow the infantry unit into Baghdad. So we get all the casualties and we treat them, and then we send them to a higher echelon of care. But our mission kind of changed. Like, we weren't getting our guys shot and killed. It was the local nationals. It was the enemy. And so our mission kind of changed halfway to Baghdad. We were stationed at one of his air bases where we made a camp, which was a pit stop for aircrafts. We just ended up having it, what they call an EPW, Enemy Prisoner of War. So the Geneva Convention says, hey, we got to treat all people, enemies and friendlies. That's the thing that the United States does. And it builds us credibility when we tell them, hey, you can fight another war or another time, kind of thing. At that time, I promoted to an E5, which is a buck sergeant. So I'm in charge of about 6 to 8 guys. And I sent one of my dudes, Paul Nakamura, on a mission that got him killed. RPG hit him in the back of the ambulance. His driver swooped around, dragged him out. He was already dead. It was an ambush. And at that point, I felt I had this survivor's guilt. And this whole time thinking, oh man, I want to be an SF guy. I'm like, man, I shouldn't even belong in the military. I shouldn't have been here. I didn't even pass the ASVAB. I shouldn't even be here. So a lot of my insecurities, my anxiety, depression started to kick in, and the head noise started to develop. All this negative thought. The enemy started playing, tap dancing in my head, and I believed it. So I got out of the military. All my brothers moved out of the house, already either in school somewhere else or they're already living out on their own. A lot of my friends that went away for college. I'm like, what am I going to do? Back at my parents' house. I'm married, have a kid. I'm like, man, I got to do something. So what do? I joined law enforcement. A lot of my buddies who were in the reserves ended up in law enforcement or in the fire department. That's the thing to do, right? What a man's supposed to be like. So I signed up with San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and got picked up within 3 months into the academy, and I was thriving. I found my niche. I'm like, finally something that I'm good at. The higher-ups liked me. I was getting talked a lot about through the chiefs and the captains. They were giving me special details, different assignments, thinking about promotion and specialize. Oh man, here's my opportunity. I could go SWAT. I could go be a detective. So I worked. I pushed that sled 8 days a week, 25 hours a day. But the problem was I was consumed from the flesh. I was hungry for what most men desire. And the enemy looped me in and got me and snatched me. And I started doing things that did not honor God. I was hanging out with single men, going to the bars, meeting women. Because I thought, hey, I'm part of the club now, right? This is what we do. I knew it was wrong, but the desire was there, so I fed into it. And came to the point where I lost a lot of trust in my family and my wife. I cheated on her, had an affair. We separated, and I was looking for a place to live. So I called up my quote unquote buddies, my brothers, hey, you got a place? I'll sleep on your couch. Nah, my old lady, she's not cool with that. What? Hey, I heard you just bought a house. Yeah, we turned that extra room into an office, and we only got, what? So I didn't have a place to stay. I was sleeping out of my car for a minute, and went through a very, very depressed time in my life. Very dark time in my life, to the point where I felt like I shouldn't be living. And I'm looking at my service weapon, and I'm like, oh, that's very tempting. And the weird thing about it, I had a sergeant that I used to work with in the jails, hated me, because he was just a very disgruntled guy. Hits me up. I don't know how he got my number. I'm sure he figured it out. He's a sergeant. Texts me, sends me scripture. And he's like, bro, he just got into an OIS, which is an officer-involved shooting. He's like, hey, never been in combat, but I know what you're going through. I know what PTSD is, a real thing. I know what you're going through. If you need someone to talk to, just send me scripture. And I'm reading, and I just, that pity party just went away. And I felt like I had a second wind. Boom. So I called my wife, made amends with her. I prayed. And I'm at this specialized detail doing backgrounds, and someone from my work who doesn't live in Temecula, lives in San Bernardino County area, starts talking to me about a church in Temecula called Orchard. And there's this pastor, Jim, who teaches Barney style. I was like, Barney style? He's like, yeah, to the point where kids can understand what the Bible means. I said, we are allowed to read the Bible? I go home, and my wife comes home from taking my daughter to a dance studio. It tells me, hey, one of the dance moms telling me about this church, Orchard. I was like, what? That is so weird. I just had this conversation at work. She's like, yeah, it's over here, blah, blah, blah. We look it up, and literally it's a block away from where we're living. And I was just telling the guys earlier, we would always drive through there, and I thought it was a daycare center. Some people think it's a Wiener Schnitzel place. And we just obviously didn't know it was a church because we weren't going to church. And we'd be sleeping in on Sundays. We'd drive by it, but by the time church service is over, we're up, out, and doing stuff in the late afternoon on a Sunday. So we go into that church, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it. It's so coincidental. My wife and I sit in our usual right side spot, and Pastor Jim does his thing, and we felt like we're the only people in the sanctuary, and that God was speaking through Pastor Jim, to us, and we cried. We held hands, we cried some more, and we went home, we cried some more, we talked about it, and we said, you know what, we need to go back to church. And that became our home since then. This was about 6-7 years ago. So we go to church. I was getting fed, but I was hungry. I knew that there was more to just going to church on Sunday. So I started getting involved in ministry. I was trying to find a home. Because of my lustful desires, I checked out CR, and I met Dan Fahrenkamp there. I don't know if you guys ever know Dan Fahrenkamp. He's got those eyes that just like, man, dude, you're such a welcoming dude and warm guy. I went there, just wasn't my thing, and no offense to anybody who's a CR guy, just wasn't my thing, and I'm like, I almost tapped out. I was like, this ain't my thing. This ain't gonna work. But before I left, he gave me his business card. He said, hey, my name is Dan. He's like, yeah, I appreciate what you do in law enforcement. You know, my son's in law enforcement. If you ever want to talk, we'll get some coffee, and we'll just talk. And I was like, who is this guy? And that was a different image that I'm used to. of a man. And I went to my car and I cried. Excuse me. The feeling of acceptance was awesome. Anyhow, so I kept searching and searching for more ministries. I went to men's ministry, started diving into Bible study. I was reading the Bible. How funny. And I started serving the church, and I saw my growth. I saw the growth in me. There was a change in me. I was just hungry. I was like, man, this is amazing. And reading the Bible, I started a discipleship group with Ron. My first discipleship. He led my group. And I'm diving in it. It's just, if you guys ever done discipleship, if never done a discipleship essentials, you got to do it. It's supposed to be a 6 month program. It was what 2.5 years? But you know, the whole point of it was being able to do that together. No matter what the problem was that we were having, because the enemy was really fighting us to get this done, because we're doing God's work. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing, disciple one another. And we made it, was it during COVID? It was also because of COVID, right? So anyway, a few months later, Pastor Arnold, who's no longer with our church, he's at a different church, did a men's breakfast, and he was a speaker. And he talked about masculinity, what a man's supposed to be. And man, I was so convicted to the point Doug was standing right next to me. He's like, "You all right, brother?" And it's like, bro, there's something going on right now. He hugs me, he prays over me, and I just realized I was living life wrong. My mind just opened up to a different lifestyle that I wanted. And it brought all the studies, in discipleship, we try to learn to memorize verses, because that's the goal, right? And I remembered, well, I kind of remembered. I have a hard time with that. But I remember doing a study on Genesis on the image of God. Genesis 1, verse 27 says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And in my head, I was thinking, he's not talking about the physical features of a man. 10 fingers and toes, 2 ears, 2 eyes, a mouth. He's talking about the characteristics. And that brought me to Galatians 5:22 to 23. Paul basically lists the characteristics of fruition in the lives of Christians when they're filled with the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God. And that's love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I was a man out of control. I let my anger, my depression, my PTSD, my lustful desires take control of me. And a real man has self-control. He's not that knuckle dragger, angry, bitter dude. He's like a Dan Fahrenkamp. He's like a Doug Campbell. He's a guy that's gentle and caring and loving, accepting everybody for who they are, no matter where they came from, what background they came from. That's God accepting each and every one of us. And that hit me hard, like a sword just penetrating through my heart. Bam! Woo! So that's the transformation. I gave you the history, gave you the transformation. Immediately after that, I wanted to get baptized. And I got baptized at the church, at Orchard Church at the old building. And it was the covenant. It was a covenant of, this is who I'm going to strive to be now. I want people to not know me from my career or what I've done in the past. I want them to know me as a Christian. I'm going to do anything and everything I can to make God and Jesus famous, right? Because that's our Great Commission, right? That's what we're supposed to do. Our Great Commission is written in Matthew 28, right? Disciple of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them what he taught us, right? Go out, do that. Speak about him. And that's my goal. That's been my goal from this point on. So what God has done for me now, after that incident, there was a time in my law enforcement career where I was on patrol and an incident happened. Very similar time where I was going through my separation with my wife. So I asked for a different assignment. But I built the confidence to go back on patrol. And I went back to patrol, and I told myself, I'm not going to go to patrol to get all the stats, to get all the arrests, to be that cool guy and show everybody up. I'm going to go to patrol and minister to young men that are going through hard times in their life. And it's interesting what happens after that. So I go in there, first day of briefing. It's a graveyard shift. I haven't done graveyards in years. I'm in my 40s. I'm already tired from just showing up. And it had been, so our week starts on a Friday night. And for the past 3 weeks before I got there, we had a homicide call. And when there's a homicide call, everybody from the shift, pretty much everybody goes over there because they got to secure the scene for evidence. There's a lot of investigative stuff that happens. We got to find the suspect and all that other stuff. So there's left, depending on what beat you're assigned to, there's a lot of calls that are waiting. Well, in briefing, we get our assignments, and the guy in the back basically says, he's just cussing a storm. And he's like, man, he's always doing this. He's always doing this. I guess he got the assignment 3 weeks in a row where his call list was like 15 calls deep. And he's pissed to the world. And I'm like, I need to go minister to this guy. So throughout the time, I'm talking to him, meeting up in different times of the night. Days go by, weeks go by, and I'm talking about the Lord to him. Long story short, because I'm running out of time, he comes back to Christ. He thanks me, buys me lunch, and he's actually a member at our church now too. And I get it. It was like, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. And my point of all of this is, your occupation isn't your purpose. Your occupation is an opportunity to do your purpose. Amen. And that's to disciple everybody. And then God does the rest. So that's my message. I hope it's convicting to you as it was for me. I want to thank everybody for showing up, and that's all I got. Thank you.